My situation happened about 2 years ago, and I can still remember it like yesterday. I believed that my ex and I could be a shining example of a great couple, but we were anything but that in the end. My story is a very serious one because of loyalty. I've been noticing a real lack of loyalty in relationships for a while now. Even though I was super loyal to my wife, she still cheated on me. My wife, female 31, and I, male 32, were married for 6 years and we were happy. As far as I could tell, we never had any real problems. Money wasn't even an issue, even though we weren't rich. We were able to pay bills and go anywhere and do what we wanted as long as we had planned for it. She worked in an office at a child clinic, and I worked in fabrication since I always worked with my hands. My wife was fun, outgoing, and always was my ride or die. She always made me stop and appreciate life more instead of working all the time. We would go and travel every year, especially since my idea of a vacation was to sit in the backyard with a drink in my hand. Thanks to her, we visited Vegas, Cancun, and visited her cousin in San Juan. This was good because I haven't lived there since I was 11 or 12 years old. It was great to have a wife who added something to my life, even though I definitely would have married her just for her looks. Her face looks just like Una Chaplin, but she has the body of the weather girl Terry Inoa. We got along with each other's family, so we were all good as family, especially since she was the only child. Hanging out at clubs and stuff was fun, but we got to the point after a while where we enjoyed each other company more. But apparently I had the situation messed up because my wife cheated on me and got suspicious during a little get-together we always have at our house. My ex and I invited our friends to hang out with us on the weekend. We would play music, drink, and play card games on Saturdays. Since the clubs weren't open, and there were no concerts, our close friends hung out at our place. It had become a regular thing, especially since we had all the drinks. This night though, after playing spades with one of my friends, he challenged another friend of mine to play me in a game of Texas Hold'em. This friend, let's just call this guy Rome, was super anxious to play me. This guy was working at the same job as my other friend, and that's how we got to know each other. Rome was the type that was flashy and arrogant, and we all would have to bring his mind out of the clouds sometimes. And the game of Texas Hold'em would do this because he never beat me one-on-one before. At the time, we just recently learned how to play it, thanks to his uncle. Even though we weren't that good, I always would beat him, and for some reason it aided him. He lost to me 7 times straight, and last time he took my talking trash a little too personal. He'd talk about having a better car than me, a better house than me, but he would act bitter about my winning streak. At first I didn't want to play, but thanks to the hecklers, Rome insisted that we play. Sure enough, when we played I ended up beating him twice. Pissed off, he wanted to play again, but I said that my ex and her friends wanted to play dominoes and had said we should stop. My ex jumped in and agreed, but he wanted to play one more game. He offered to put up $100 to play again, and when I still said no, he upped it to $150. After this, my friends started heckling me, saying it was easy money. I don't gamble because I know my luck. But I decided to play for the money, even though we don't put up any real money. It turns out he actually beat me and I ended up losing $150. He jumped out his seat and got in the face of our friend who was heckling him to gloat. They got into a heated argument and we had to break them up for a while. After a handshake, Rome told me he really didn't want my money and declined when I said I was still going to pay him. When my ex came in from the kitchen, Rome told her he won, and she seemed surprised and happy for him. After giving him a hug, she told us it was time for her and her friends to play dominoes. The rest of the night we didn't have any more problems. The only thing we had to deal with was him still gloating. When everybody was leaving, I was talking to my best friend Rich in our driveway. Standing there with him, I was able to see through the window of our house and see Rome talking to my ex. At first, I didn't think that anything was wrong and thought he was still gloating. But then I saw him pull her by her waist to him and put his forehead to hers. After a second, she walked back into our living room and he followed her out. This bothered me so much, and Rich asked me what was wrong since his back was kind of turned to it and he missed what I saw. I said nothing and I told him to get home safe. After everyone left, my mind couldn't get off what I saw. While cleaning up, I tried to rationalize it by saying they're friends too and that she was just happy for him that he won. But knowing how Rome was with women, that excuse I had only lasted a day. The next day what I saw ate at my mind. I have never been the jealous type of guy, but it did make me nervous and I had to get doubt out of my mind. That night after we went to bed, I stayed up until 2 in the morning when I knew she was asleep. Sliding out the bed, I took her phone and took my phone too. Taking our phones to the living room, I called my brother Juan. My ex had a lock on her phone and I knew the only one who could get me in it was Juan. I called him about 7 times and he finally picked up. Sounding really annoyed, he asked me what I wanted. I told him to do me a favor and call her phone for me. He asked me why and I told him I would tell him later, and after hanging up he found her number and called it for valid excuse. After answering it quickly, I went in her texts and it totally broke me. There was a bunch of texts about him screwing her for about a year, and it was even worse than that. This guy was sending her videos of him playing with his eggplant, and she sent him back a pic with her mouth open and her tongue out. There were at least 7 or 8 pictures of him exposing himself and I had to scroll away. I was so mad that I almost threw her phone across the room. My world was officially turned upside down and though I was really going through it, I knew what I had to do. After taking screenshots, I sent them to my phone and put her phone back on the charger. I decided to sleep on the couch because I definitely wasn't sleeping with her. I was already planning how I wanted to get the hell out of this BS marriage. The next morning when we were getting ready for work, my ex asked me why I didn't come back to bed. I said, I didn't want to. She thought I was just being a smart aleck and playfully slapped me upside the head. If it wasn't so early, my ex probably would have gotten sassy with me, but I just went to make her coffee to start the day. I never really went to work. I started looking for a good lawyer all day. After finding one, he was expensive, but he told me the best way to get the job done. When I filed, I had to wait until she got served and that was the hard part. Seeing her in the house, she would try to hold a conversation with me, but I failed miserably. All that I could give her was yes, no, and maybe. Talking to her was hard to do after reading those texts. Knowing that she went to his place after work, and if I'm hanging out with Juan, she'd invite him to our place. At first she would tell him it was the last time and then she would openly invite him over and text him until he did. This was an every week thing. I feel like I was lucky I had caught her. At least now I know why she always turned me down in bed and had to promise me coitus. I just couldn't wait until she got served at her job. I was ready to explode on her. And I was ready to explode on Rome too. As messed up in the head as I was ready to move on. On the day she got served, I decided to take that day off as well. My ex called me and screamed at me that she couldn't believe it. I just served her with divorce papers. Apparently, she got served during her lunch break like I had asked, and her friends at work saw this. They had to be the ones to tell her that they were divorce papers. I told her that I was divorcing her and I needed her to look at it before she came back home. My ex hung up and I knew she was on her way back. I probably should have had a friend with me at the time, but I wasn't thinking perfectly about the situation. When she pulled up, I sent her the screenshots of her texts with Rome. The second she bust in she was crying and screaming at me. She said she knew I was acting funny and asked how I could all of a sudden divorce her. I said she must not have gotten my text and said check her phone. She said she wanted me to tell her, but I said just check her phone. She had looked in her phone and when she saw her own texts with Rome, she dropped the phone and put her face in her hands. She sat down on the couch and it was my turn to start screaming at her. I called her a floozy in so many different ways and asked her how she could do this with my friend. She had this look of disbelief in her eyes and just said, sorry, without even looking at me. I got my keys and just left to be over at Juan's house. After breaking all the news to Juan, I called my family and my friends. I then told her mother and she relayed the message to her father who was in Florida helping a friend with his business. After sending the screenshots to Rome and telling him I was going to kick his butt if I saw him, he texted back, I'm sorry bro. After this, I had a meet up with my friends and told all of them that if they wanted to still be friends with Rome, that's cool. But I let them know that's not how I operate and I wouldn't hang with him if it happened to them. They agreed with me and said to call if I needed them. My ex called me and said that she wanted to talk. She asked me if there was any way for us to reconcile. I told her not only did she cheat on me, but I saw that she was talking crap about me. She told him I wouldn't find out because I was wrapped around her finger and agreed with every bad thing that Rome was saying about me. She said she was sorry and said when we all got together at our house, He started flirting with her and always complimented her body. After he was getting in cool with her friends, they would hang out with Rome, but she wouldn't tell me. So whenever she would go to a Drake or a Bad Bunny concert with her friends, Rome was with them. I asked her why she didn't say anything. She said because she didn't want it to look weird. After that, he started flirting with her through texts and she started flirting back. Then one of the few days I was passed out from drinks, they started kissing and it led to them touching each other. She said that one day he popped up at our house when I was out. After claiming he just wanted to talk, he had started touching and charming her again and then he screwed her. I told her I know that she doesn't love me, and that's why there won't be any kind of reconciliation. After cursing her out again, I said don't talk to me. Talk to my lawyer and hung up. I was glad we didn't have a family yet. The divorce was terrible. She ended up getting our house, but she wasn't going to be able to keep it without my income. She had decided to sell it and moved in with her friend Dina. Rome was cut off from my other friends because he was definitely not trustworthy. I was happy about this because with both of them out my life, I felt free, especially in my new home I was renting. For 2 years I hadn't heard from either of them. I ran into a friend of hers at a restaurant and she seemed happy to see me when she was coming in. She spilled the tea about my ex and said she moved out of Dina's apartment and got her own place recently. She said she missed me because she's on Tinder, and it frustrates her. We both just laughed and I told her to enjoy her dinner because my brother and I were leaving. I broke down and checked her profile on Facebook and as of late, she's thirsting over some guy who looks younger than her and a total loser. I just shook my head instantly and promised myself not to look on her Facebook page again. My ex's friend made me want to post this to say to you guys to be careful. Loyalty is important in relationships and always know who's around you. My wife didn't love me, and she was just too selfish. Plus she is a gorgeous woman so she was placed on a pedestal by me and honestly didn't deserve it. But knowing all this, she took advantage of my love for her. All this honestly got me back in my feelings, but I want to tell you guys you can definitely make it over this. This was a hard thing to go back through, but I hope you don't lose sight of your happiness. I appreciate this community. Make money and live long.